friends, it is Danny. Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing episode number 2 of Cooking the Books, a series that I've created on my channel that I haven't done since March, where I make bookish related treats. Last time I did 3 different recipes of Love Simon desserts, all featuring Oreos. I'm gonna be real with you, I really love making cookies, and so a lot of these episodes might be cookies, unless I get some suggestions for like things that are not cookies. Today in particular though needs to be a cookie recipe because we are going to be doing Snickerdoodles for Lara Jean from To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Danni. I know that the movie version of this came out not too long ago, like a month or 2 ago, and the movie is great. But one thing I didn't like about the movie was that they never really stayed true to Lara Jean's character in terms of how her hobbies not only included scrapbooking and like DIYing things, but she also really loved baking, and baking was like her coping mechanism for a lot of things. And one of the recipes she makes, I don't know if it's in this book or one of the further books, I'm pretty sure it's this one, is she makes snickerdoodle cookies. And I have a recipe for snickerdoodle cookies that I absolutely adore, that I have made a bajillion times. And so when I thought what I was going to do for my second episode of Cooking the Books, I knew that Lara Jean's Snickerdoodles had to be what I was doing. Ignore the little bell in the background. That is Indy roaming around trying to figure out what I'm doing. So if you want to learn how to make Snickerdoodles inspired by Lara Jean from To All the Boys I've Loved Before, so that you can watch them when you watch the movie or when you're reading the book on a cozy fall day, cozy meaning under a blanket and freezing because it's Canada, so it's wet and muddy and bleh, then stay tuned to this video because we're gonna make the cookies. So in order to make these cookies, you are going to need all of these things. You need 1 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of white granulated sugar, 1/3 cup of light brown sugar, 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. Mine here is salted because that's what we use here at my house. If you are using salted butter like I am, then you just don't have to add extra salt. But if you are using unsalted butter, you can add in 1/4 teaspoon of salt just for taste, 1 large egg, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. One of the most important parts about baking a snickerdoodle is using cream of tartar, so you need 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Basically, cream of tartar is just a levelant, and that basically reacts with the baking soda to make the cookies rise and give them that thick and soft chew. But there is something you can do if you don't have cream of tartar, and you can use fresh lemon juice or white vinegar in replacement for it. So for every 1/2 teaspoon of cream of tartar that you would be using, you substitute 1 teaspoon of either lemon juice or white vinegar. The other solution is looking online and finding out the conversion of how much baking powder you would need as opposed to using the baking soda and cream of tartar mix, because those are the 2 things that work together to make the cookie rise. So that's a lot of science. We're done with that. And the last 2 things in the ingredients portion is you need 2 teaspoons of cinnamon as well as 1/4 cup of white granulated sugar. Again, these sugars need to be separated because this sugar goes into the actual cookie dough, while this little cup of sugar that I have here goes into a separate bowl with the cinnamon for rolling the cookies after we've made the dough. Then for non-ingredient things, underneath all of the ingredients, I have, as always, my cookie pan, which needs to be greased or lined with parchment paper. Also going to need 2 separate bowls, one for dry ingredients, one for wet ingredients for the cookie dough. I have here 2 spatulas, and I personally prefer these bendy ones because they're easier to get into the bowl. And then I also have this container with cinnamon sugar that I have used prior when making these cookies, but I am just going to add the cinnamon and sugar into this and then mix it up. If you're making this for the first time and you don't have a container of cinnamon sugar already made up, then you just use another container to hold the cinnamon sugar, because as you can see, you will have leftovers for future cookies. So I think that is everything, which means we can start making the cookies. All right, so get your first bowl ready. To start out, you will need your 1/2 cup of white granulated sugar, 1/2 cup of salted or unsalted butter, depending on what you have and want to use, and 1/3 cup of lightly packed brown sugar. Everything goes in the bowl. Technically, you could be doing this with a hand mixer, but I personally don't feel like doing that. So you're going to add all 3 of these things into the bowl, and then you're gonna mix them together until they're very combined, and you can pretty much pick up a piece of the butter in your fingers because the sugar kind of makes it less sticky. You want to make sure that your butter is softened, so I would say take it out about 1/2 hour to an hour before you are going to make this recipe, because otherwise your sugar is not going to mix well with your butter. I switched over to a metal spoon. I feel like I'm going to have more control with it. You want it to be creamed until it looks something like this consistency. I keep saying Lara Jean, but I know in the movie it's Lara Jean, so let me preface by saying if I say it wrong, I do know her actual name is Lara Jean. It's just out of habit, I read her name as Lara Jean when I first read the book. That being said, she has made some interesting recipes during the entirety of this series, including but not limited to orange creamsicle and fruitcake cookies. I think her favorite thing to do is cookies as well, so that is why this is perfect. Next, you want to add in your teaspoon of vanilla extract and your 1 large egg, and then you want to mix it all up. I always put a little extra splash of vanilla because I love the smell of it, but also love the taste that it gives cookies. One day I will learn how to crack these eggs one-handed. And make sure that you scrape down all of the sides so that when you're mixing, all of the dough is being mixed together. You want to mix it until it looks like this. Switching over to your dry ingredients bowl, you are going to add in all of the remaining dry ingredients, which is 1 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/2 a teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. This is also where you would add in that pinch of salt for taste if you were doing salt with unsalted butter. I like to mix my dry ingredients around a bit before I incorporate them into the wet, so that way when they mix, there's not going to be chunks of certain dry ingredients. They're all going to be incorporated. This would also be a great time to sift it if you had a sieve. Bringing back our wet dough, we are going to slowly incorporate all of our dry, so I like to shake it in about 1/3 at a time. Make sure you're scraping the sides every time you go around, so that way you get all of the dry ingredients that fly up. So like I was saying earlier, one of the things I'm kind of really salty about that the movie didn't do is they didn't give Lara Jean, excuse me, they didn't give her the personality trait that she has in the book where she bakes a lot of things and DIYs, and that was one of the things I was actually really excited to see, and that's why I was kind of disappointed that that didn't happen in the movie. Like, the only thing she makes in the movie was cupcakes, and you didn't even get to see the finished product because Peter takes her to the party and you never see the finished cupcakes. Now this is completely mixed in, and you can touch the cookie dough without it sticking. Sticky enough that you can roll it in something like we are going to do, but it's not too sticky to the point where it's wet. Now we're gonna set this aside and go to the special part of this cookie that makes it a snickerdoodle, and that is making the cinnamon sugar to roll the cookies in. So like I said before, I have made these cookies a bajillion times, so I already have some leftover cinnamon sugar laying around. So in this bowl, I am going to combine my 2 teaspoons, that's teaspoons, not tablespoons, of ground cinnamon, and also 1/4 cup of just normal white granulated sugar. And you have something that looks like this, which is cinnamon sugar. So I'm just going to pour this into here with my other cinnamon sugar, and I'm gonna shake it up a little bit. All right, big puff of cinnamon just came out. Now I have a great amount of cinnamon sugar to dip these cookies in or roll these cookies in. Normally, I would use a tray like this and just put the cookies on here, but I'm gonna be extra today and use my heart-shaped cupcake tin, which I think you can make cookies in. I did a test run and it turned out mostly like a heart, so I think I'm gonna do like 6 like this just to see if they turn out, and then I'm gonna put the rest on this pan. Basically for this tray, I'm making them a little bit bigger so that they spread into the heart. But usually, like, I'm taking this size of dough. If you want smaller cookies, you can use this, which is a teaspoon, and they'll come out small and puffy and pretty and good. And once you've got your dough into a ball, you take your cinnamon sugar and you drop it in, and you make sure it's nice and coated in the cinnamon sugar. And when you can see like a layer of cinnamon sugar and you can pick it up and it's not as sticky anymore, if at all, you know it's ready. So then you take this, and on a normal occasion you would take your flat cookie tray and just stick the cookie on there and space them out like 8 cookies per tray, 2 inches apart. But I'm just flattening this down a little bit so that it spreads, because that's what I did with my trial cookie. If you make smaller cookies, this will yield like upwards of 20 cookies. If you make them a bit bigger like this, you're probably gonna get a little bit less. But I like big cookies and I cannot lie. And I also want them to be cute because Lara Jean. You would think after my watching the movie a bajillion times, because it's my go-to comfort movie now, that I would know how to say her name. But I still say Lara Jean. I just have always called her that, and I don't think I'll ever get used to calling her Lara Jean. I mean, the worst case scenario is they just look like a little bit of a deformed heart. I don't think the people at my work are going to care, because whenever there's treats in my staff room, they're usually gone by the end of the day. At this point, you can have your oven preheating to 350. That's the universal baking degree, if you ask me, because 99% of recipes will call for an oven at 350. Okay, so those look like crap right now, but here's hoping that they turn into pretty little hearts. I cooked my first batch at 10 minutes and they turned out like this, where they're hard on the outside but nice and soft on the inside. So I would actually do these for about 9 minutes instead of 10, or even 8.5. Cookies are done. So these ones here on the plate are the first tray that I did, and I just put them on the tray like you saw and then put them in the oven. So they didn't spread out as much as I expected them to, and I think that's just because I used smaller dough balls to make these. But as you can see with this one, they puff up a lot, which is what you want from a snickerdoodle. Then you have the heart cookies, which I think they turned out. They look like little hearts. I think they're cute. There are these ones which just came out of the oven. So then these ones, in comparison to these ones, they spread out a lot more, as you can see from the difference. And that is because with these ones, when I put the dough balls onto the pan, I put a little thumbprint in the middle of the cookie before putting them in the oven. So they technically are like a thumbprint snickerdoodle, if you will. I think that thumbprint just kind of helped it come out of the ball shape and spread out. So now it's time to make a pretty plate. So these are Lara Jean snickerdoodles. I absolutely love how this plate looks. I think it's very cute. I only put one heart cookie on to make it look aesthetically pleasing. 10 out of 10 recommend this recipe if you are rereading the series or watching the movie, or if you just feel like making some cookies and you need a quick and easy recipe, this should be a go-to. I have been your host, Danny Darling. I've always wanted to say that. Comment down below some other book suggestions that you want me to make treats for. I am mostly looking for books that already have like food themes. Another thing I can do if they don't have food themes is I can make treats based on the colors slash like feelings I get from their covers. So if that is something you are interested in, please comment down below, leaving some suggestions and ideas. I'd love your input. You will definitely get credit if I use your idea. That is it for this video. I don't know what my next one's going to be, but whatever it is, I will see you guys in that one. Happy baking and reading, friends!